The massive crystalline being lay sprawled across the dead gray rocks of Zerion Prime like a fallen mountain. Vorthak the Eternal, once the most respected leader of the powerful Kethmori Empire, now barely glowed with the faint light that had, once blazed across entire star systems. His towering form, nearly 300 meters tall, was covered in spreading black veins that pulsed with sickly energy. Captain Lee Hyun pressed his face against the observation window of the exploration, ship New Dawn, watching the dying giant with a mixture of awe and sadness. The Korean officer had seen many strange things during his years exploring the outer rim of known space, but nothing quite like this. The being below them had lived for over 10,000 years, had witnessed the birth and death of entire civilizations, and now he was dying alone on a quarantined world. "Sir, the energy readings are off the charts," reported Dr. Park Mina, the ship's medical officer. Her scanner beeped frantically as she tried to make sense of the data flowing across her screen. "This quantum plague is unlike anything in our databases." The plague itself was a mystery that had terrified the galaxy's most advanced species. It infected beings made of pure energy, corrupting their very essence from within. The Kethmori, who existed as living crystals of condensed starlight, were particularly vulnerable. When Vorthak had contracted the disease, his own people had made a decision that shocked the galactic community. They declared him untouchable and exiled him to this dead world to die alone. Navigation Officer Kim Jae shook his head as he reviewed the quarantine notices. "The Zephyrians won't even send their automated probes within 50 light years of this place. The Mindari Collective classified the entire system as a dead zone." Engineering Chief Choi Dae looked up from his console with disgust. "So they just dumped him here like garbage? After everything he did for them?" The stories of Vorthak's deeds were legendary throughout the galaxy. He had single-handedly prevented 3 major wars, had guided countless younger species toward peaceful development, and had served as the Kethmori Empire's greatest diplomat for millennia. His wisdom was sought by leaders across hundreds of worlds, yet when he needed help, those same leaders had turned their backs on him. A deep, resonant voice suddenly filled the bridge, speaking directly into their minds through quantum resonance. "Small beings in your metal shell, why do you linger in this place of death? Your primitive vessels cannot withstand the corruption that flows through my dying form." Captain Lee stepped forward, speaking aloud even though he knew Vorthak could hear his thoughts. "We received your distress signal. We came to help." A sound like distant thunder rolled across the planet's surface as Vorthak attempted something that might have been laughter. "Help? Little humans, your entire species has existed for barely a moment compared to my lifetime. Your technology is crude metal and burning chemicals compared to the energy manipulation of the great civilizations. What help could you possibly offer to one such as I?" Dr. Park studied her readings more carefully. "Sir, there's something interesting here. The plague seems to follow very specific patterns, almost like it's designed to target advanced energy-based life forms. The learned, ones of a dozen species, have examined my condition." Vorthak's voice carried notes of bitter amusement. "The Zephyrians with their quantum computers, the Mindari with their collective consciousness, the Vorlon with their biomechanical mastery, all have declared my case hopeless. All have fled rather than risk contamination." Communications Officer. Hansel looked up from his station with an expression of growing anger. "They're all cowards, every single one of them." "Perhaps," Vorthak replied, somehow managing to convey a sense of ancient sadness. "Or perhaps they are simply practical. The plague I carry could theoretically spread to any sufficiently advanced technological system. Your species, being so young and primitive, might actually be safer than most." Captain Lee felt something stirring in his chest, the same feeling he'd had as a child when he'd found injured animals and nursed them back to health despite his parents' concerns. Just because we're young doesn't mean we're helpless. The great being's light flickered, and for a moment the black veins seemed to pulse more slowly. "You speak with conviction, small captain. But conviction alone cannot cure what ails me. I am dying, and soon this corruption will consume what remains of my essence. It would be kinder for you to leave now, before you witness the final extinguishing of one who once burned bright among the stars." Dr. Park suddenly looked up from her scanner with excitement in her eyes. Captain, I think I'm seeing something the others might have missed. The plague adapts to predictable energy patterns, but our technology runs on much more chaotic systems. Kim Jae nodded slowly. Human technology isn't elegant like theirs. It's messy, unpredictable. Exactly the kind of thing that might confuse. A plague designed to target advanced civilizations, Choi Dae added. Captain Lee felt that stirring in his chest grow stronger. Around him, his crew was looking at each other with the same expression he knew must be on his own face. It was the look people got when they were about to do something completely crazy and completely necessary. Vorthak, he said firmly, we're not leaving. The crew of the New Dawn spent the next 3 days studying everything they could about Vorthak's condition. Dr. Park Mina barely slept, running test after test on the energy readings they were picking up from the massive alien. Her small medical bay had been transformed into something that looked like a mad scientist's laboratory, with cables and monitoring equipment scattered across every surface. This is incredible, she muttered to herself, staring at the data scrolling across her screen. The quantum plague isn't just random destruction. It's actually quite intelligent. It learns the patterns of whatever system it's attacking, and then corrupts them from within. Captain Lee Hyun found her there at 3 a.m, surrounded by empty coffee cups and crumpled notes. Mina, you need to get some rest. I can't sleep, she replied without looking up. Every advanced species in the galaxy gave up on him because they couldn't think outside their perfect little boxes. But look at this. She pointed to a chaotic-looking waveform on her display. Human brain patterns, human technology, even our ship's power systems. They're all messy and unpredictable. In the engineering section, Choi Dae was having similar thoughts as he examined their ship's systems. Unlike the sleek, perfectly designed vessels of other species, human ships were built with redundancy, chaos, and pure stubbornness. Their engines didn't run on elegant energy manipulation but on controlled explosions and brute force physics. You know what? He said to Kim Jae, who was helping him run diagnostics. Maybe being primitive isn't such a bad thing after all. Kim nodded, looking at the readings from Vorthak's massive form on the planet below. The plague expects order, logic, predictable patterns. But humans? We're anything but predictable. Meanwhile, Hansol was dealing with increasingly frantic communications from various alien governments. The Galactic Council had issued 17 separate warnings about the quarantine zone. The Zephyrian Fleet Command had sent 3 official condemnations of their presence. Even the usually peaceful Mindari Collective had transmitted a strongly worded message about the dangers of human recklessness. Captain, Han reported during their morning briefing, the Kethmori Empire is demanding we leave immediately. They're saying our presence violates the terms of Vorthak's exile. Captain Lee's jaw tightened. His exile? They threw him away like trash and now they're worried about us being here? Dr. Park looked up from her latest readings. I've been thinking about what Vorthak said yesterday, about his people abandoning him. Can you imagine living for 10,000 years, serving your people faithfully, only to have them turn their backs on you when you need them most? The bridge fell quiet for a moment. Each crew member was thinking about their own families, their own loved ones back on Earth. The idea of being abandoned when sick and dying was almost too horrible to contemplate. The thing is, Kim said slowly, I don't think any of the advanced species are actually evil. They're just terrified. The plague could theoretically spread to their entire civilizations. So they chose safety over compassion, Choi added with disgust. They chose protocol over doing what's right. Captain Lee stood up and walked to the observation window. Far below, Vorthak's crystalline form was barely glowing now. The black veins of corruption had spread further across his massive body overnight. Time was running out. Sir, Dr. Park said quietly, I think I might have an idea. It's crazy and it's dangerous and it probably won't work. Tell me. The plague adapts to energy patterns, right? But what if we could introduce patterns that are so chaotic, so unpredictable, that it can't adapt fast enough? Human neural activity might actually interfere with the plague's ability to spread. Engineering Chief Choi leaned forward. You're talking about directly interfacing with an alien consciousness infected with a quantum plague. The energy feedback alone could kill us all. And if we do nothing, he dies anyway, Dr. Park replied. At least this way we're trying, Saul looked nervous. The political ramifications alone could destroy human relations with half the galaxy. We're talking about violating every quarantine protocol ever written. Captain Lee closed his eyes and thought about his daughter back on Earth. She was only 8 years old, and she had a habit of bringing home stray cats and injured birds despite his wife's protests. "Daddy," she'd said to him before his last departure, "you have to help people who need help. That's what good people do." "Vorthak," he called out, knowing the ancient being could hear him. "We want to try something. It's risky for all of us, but we think it might work." The response came slowly, tinged with surprise and something that might have been hope. "You would risk your lives for one who is not of your species? Your technology could be corrupted. Your ship could be destroyed. Your very minds could be infected." "Yes," Captain Lee said simply. "We would." A long pause followed. When Vorthak spoke again, his mental voice carried emotions that hadn't been there before. Amazement, gratitude, and perhaps a flicker of the same hope that was growing in the hearts of the human crew. "In all my millennia of existence, I have never encountered beings quite like you humans. Very well. I place my fate in your chaotic, stubborn, beautiful hands." Dr. Park smiled as her fingers flew across her console, beginning the most important work of her life. The first attempt nearly killed them all. Dr. Park Mina had spent 2 sleepless days modifying their medical scanners to interface with Vorthak's crystalline structure. When she activated the connection, a surge of alien energy tore through the ship's systems like lightning. Every light on the bridge flickered, the gravity generator stuttered, and Han Solo's communication console exploded in a shower of sparks. "Cut the connection," Captain Lee shouted as emergency alarms blared throughout the ship. Dr. Park's hands shook as she shut down the interface. The energy feedback was too strong. His consciousness is just too vast for our systems to handle directly. Down on the planet's surface, Vorthak's massive form had gone completely dark for several terrifying minutes. When his light finally returned, it was even dimmer than before. The failed connection had actually made his condition worse. "I felt your minds touch mine for a brief moment," his mental voice whispered weakly into their thoughts. "Your species experiences existence so differently than mine. Where we are order and pattern, you are chaos and creativity. It is fascinating." Engineering Chief Choi Dae wiped sweat from his forehead as he surveyed the damage to their systems. "We need a different approach. Maybe instead of trying to connect directly, we could find a way to gradually synchronize our technology with his biorhythms." Kim Jae pulled up star charts on his console. "There are 3 other human ships within communications range. The cargo hauler Steady Progress, the research vessel Curiosity, and that old mining ship, the Lucky Strike. We're going to need all the help we can get," Captain Lee decided. "Han, send out a general distress call to all human vessels. Tell them we need volunteers for a dangerous rescue mission." The response surprised everyone. Within hours, not just the 3 nearby ships, but 17 other human vessels had changed course to assist. They came from all walks of life: merchant traders, scientific researchers, miners, even a small passenger liner that had been carrying tourists to the outer colonies. Captain Song Min-ho of the Steady Progress was the first to arrive. His weathered face appeared on their main screen with a grin. "Heard you folks were trying to save a giant space crystal. Count us in." Dr. Lisa Huang from the research vessel Curiosity brought specialized equipment. "I've been studying quantum mechanics for 20 years. If anyone can figure out how to cure a quantum plague, it's going to be humans. We're too stubborn to accept that something is impossible." Even old Captain Park Jun-seo of the Lucky Strike, whose mining ship was held together with spare parts and prayer, offered to help. "My engines might be ancient, but they run on pure human ingenuity. Sometimes that's exactly what you need." As the small fleet assembled in orbit around Xerion, Prime Dr. Park began to see the solution more clearly. "It's not about overpowering the plague," she explained to the assembled captains during their video conference. It's about confusing it. The plague adapts to patterns, but what if we could create so many different patterns that it couldn't keep up? The plan they developed was beautifully chaotic. Each ship would contribute its own unique energy signature to a combined treatment matrix. The cargo hauler's massive engines, the research vessel's precision instruments, the mining ship's rough-and-ready power systems, and dozens of other vessels, each adding their own piece to a technological symphony that no advanced alien species would ever think to attempt. This is completely insane, Dr. Huang admitted as they began the delicate process of linking all the ship's systems together. No two human vessels run exactly the same way. The probability of system incompatibilities is enormous. That's exactly why it might work, Dr. Park replied with growing excitement. The plague expects elegant, predictable technology. Instead, we're giving it a mess of contradictory signals that shouldn't even be able to work together. Vorthak listened to their preparations with growing amazement. Your species approaches problems in ways that defy all logic. Where others see obstacles, you see opportunities. Where others see incompatibility, you see potential. As the human fleet worked through the night, modifying systems and running countless tests, something unexpected began to happen. The crew started sharing stories, jokes, and encouragement across the communication channels. The cargo hauler's crew told funny stories about their adventures in the Outer Rim. The research team shared fascinating discoveries from their recent expedition. The miners sang old working songs to keep everyone's spirits up. You know what's remarkable? Vorthak observed as he listened to the human chatter. Your people find joy even in the midst of danger. You support each other, not because you must, but because you choose to. Captain Lee smiled as he watched his display show the growing network of ships surrounding the planet. That's just who we are. We don't abandon our own, and we don't abandon those who need help. Even when those in need are not of your species? Especially, then, anyone can help their own kind. It takes real character to help strangers. By dawn, the human fleet had created something that looked like organized chaos. A network of 18 different ships, each contributing its own unique energy patterns to a combined treatment system that no computer could have designed and no advanced species would have dared to attempt. Beginning final systems check, Dr. Park announced. If this works, we're about to make medical history. If it doesn't, it'll work, Captain Lee said with quiet confidence. It has to. The moment of truth arrived at dawn on Xerion Prime. 18 human ships hung in perfect formation above the dying giant, their mismatched engines humming in an impossible harmony. Dr. Park Mina's hands trembled as she prepared to activate the treatment sequence they had spent days perfecting. All ships report ready, Han Sol announced from his rebuilt communication station. Energy matrices are synchronized as much as they're ever going to be. Captain Lee Hyun looked down at Vorthak's massive crystalline form. The black veins of Virao corruption had spread even further overnight, covering nearly 60% of the ancient being's body. Time was running out fast. Vorthak, he called out, we're ready to begin, but this is going to require complete trust between us. Our systems will need to merge with your consciousness temporarily. The response came slowly, heavy with exhaustion. In all my millennia, no being has ever asked to share my mind completely. The risk to your small, fragile forms could be catastrophic. Dr. Park checked her readings one final time. The plague has adapted to every treatment the advanced species tried because they all followed predictable patterns. Our approach is different. We're going to hit it with 18 different types of chaos all at once. Chaos, Vorthak mused. Perhaps that is exactly what is needed. The first phase began gently. Dr. Park activated the primary connection, and immediately her console lit up with readings she had never seen before. Vorthak's consciousness was vast beyond human comprehension, filled with memories spanning thousands of years and knowledge of countless civilizations. I can feel all of your minds. Vorthak's voice carried wonder now. So many different thoughts, so many unique perspectives. Captain Song's practical determination, Dr. Huang's scientific curiosity, Captain Park's stubborn optimism. Each of you approaches existence in your own distinct way. Engineering Chief Choi Dae monitored the energy flow between ships. Quantum resonance is holding steady. The plague doesn't know what to make of our signal patterns, but as they moved into the second phase, things began to go wrong. The quantum plague, sensing the threat to its existence, fought back with vicious intelligence. It began adapting faster than ever before, learning to mimic some of their chaotic patterns. Energy feedback spiking on the Lucky Strike, Captain Park Junseo reported, his weathered face tense with concentration. My old engines are taking a beating, but we're holding together. Suddenly, Kim Jae's navigation console exploded in a shower of sparks. The young officer was thrown backward, his uniform smoking. Dr. Park rushed to check on him while trying to maintain the connection. I'm okay, Kim gasped, struggling to his feet. Don't stop the treatment. But the plague was learning. It began sending corrupted energy patterns back through their connection, threatening to infect the human ship's systems. On the research vessel Curiosity, Dr. Huang watched in horror as her precision instruments began displaying impossible readings. The plague is trying to corrupt our technology, she reported. It's adapting to our chaos faster than we anticipated. Captain Lee felt sweat beading on his forehead as he made a decision that could doom them all. All ships increase power to maximum. We're going to overwhelm it with everything we have. Sir, that could overload our entire fleet, Choi warned. Then we better make sure it works. The combined energy output of 18 human ships poured into Vorthak's crystalline matrix. The ancient being's form began to glow brighter than it had in months as the chaotic human energy patterns flooded through his consciousness. But the strain was enormous. On ship after ship, systems began failing under the massive power requirements. Hull breach on Deck 3, Han reported as their own ship shuddered under the energy load. Emergency bulkheads are holding, but barely. Down. On the planet's surface, something extraordinary was happening. The black veins of corruption weren't just stopping their spread. They were actually retreating. The quantum plague, faced with an impossible mix of chaotic energy patterns from 18 different human sources, couldn't adapt fast enough. It's working, Dr. Park shouted over the sound of failing systems. The plague is actually being destroyed. But victory came at a cost. The steady progress lost main power completely, running on emergency batteries. The Lucky Strike's ancient engines finally gave up entirely, leaving the old mining ship dead in space. 3 other vessels reported critical system failures. In the crucial final moments, Vorthak made a choice that would save them all. Instead of passively receiving their chaotic energy, he began to actively work with it, using his vast consciousness to guide and direct the treatment. The connection became a true partnership, human chaos and creativity combined with ancient wisdom and experience. Your species is remarkable. Vorthak's mental voice grew stronger with each passing second. You face the impossible and make it possible through sheer determination. The last of the black corruption vanished from his crystalline form like shadows fleeing before the dawn. Vorthak the Eternal blazed with renewed light, his massive structure pulsing with health and vitality for the first time in years. We did it, Captain Lee whispered, hardly believing their success. Around the fleet, human crews were cheering despite their damaged ships and failing systems. They had achieved what the galaxy's most advanced civilizations had declared impossible. Through chaos, determination, and simple human stubbornness, they had cured the incurable. My friends, Vorthak's voice now rang clear and strong across all frequencies. You have given me more than life. You have given me hope. 3 months after Vorthak's miraculous recovery, the entire galaxy was still reeling from the shock. The news had spread like wildfire through every inhabited system, reaching the farthest corners of known space. The impossible had happened. A young primitive species had succeeded where the galaxy's most advanced civilizations had failed. Captain Lee Hyun stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council, surrounded by representatives from hundreds of different species. The massive chamber buzzed with conversations in dozens of languages, but all eyes were on the brilliant crystalline form that dominated the center of the room. Vorthak the Eternal had come to testify, and his presence commanded absolute attention. Honored delegates, Vorthak's voice resonated through both speakers and direct mental communication. I stand before you today not as the dying exile you abandoned on Zerion Prime, but as living proof of what can be accomplished when compassion overcomes fear. The Kethmori delegation shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Ambassador Zethalar, who had personally signed Vorthak's exile order, looked like he wanted to disappear entirely. The political embarrassment of abandoning their greatest hero while humans risked everything to save him had shattered the Kethmori Empire's reputation across the galaxy. Dr. Park Mina sat in the human delegation section, still amazed by how much their lives had changed. She had become the galaxy's leading expert on quantum plague treatment almost overnight. Universities from a dozen different worlds were offering her research positions, and her improvised treatment protocols were being studied by the most brilliant minds in known space. The humans approached my condition with something we had forgotten, Vorthak continued, his crystalline form pulsing with gentle light. They brought hope where others brought fear. They brought creativity where others brought rigid thinking. Most importantly, they brought compassion where others brought abandonment. Engineering Chief Choide watched from the gallery as representatives from the Zephyrian Confederation leaned forward in their seats. The Zephyrians, with their perfect quantum computers and flawless technology, had been particularly humbled by humanity's success. Their ambassador had already approached the human delegation 3 times, seeking to understand how such primitive methods had achieved the impossible. The political ramifications were enormous. The Mindari Collective, who prided themselves on their advanced telepathic abilities, had to admit that human mental patterns were more complex and chaotic than they had ever imagined. The Vorlan Federation, masters of biomechanical integration, were struggling to understand how human technology could interface so effectively with alien consciousness. But perhaps the most significant change was happening on Earth itself. Kim Jay had returned home to find his planet transformed overnight from a minor member of the galactic community to one of the most sought-after allies in known space. Trade delegations were arriving daily, offering everything from advanced technology to exclusive mining rights. The human approach to the quantum plague has revolutionized our understanding of treatment protocols, announced Dr. Thessara, the galaxy's leading medical researcher. Their chaotic methodology has already been successfully applied to 17 other previously incurable conditions. Hansol, now serving as humanity's chief diplomatic liaison, couldn't help but smile as he watched the proceedings. The same species that had been dismissing humans as charmingly primitive just months ago were now desperately trying to form alliances with Earth. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Captain Song Min-ho of the Steady Progress had become something of a folk hero. His cargo hauler, patched up and running again despite the damage from the rescue mission, was now carrying diplomatic pouches between Earth and the galaxy's major capitals. The rough-spoken cargo captain found himself dining with ambassadors and being consulted on matters of interstellar policy. What the humans did, Vorthak explained to the assembly, was not just cure a disease. They demonstrated that the greatest problems sometimes require the simplest solutions. They showed that compassion is not weakness but the greatest strength any species can possess. The impact on human society was equally profound. Captain Lee had returned to Earth to find that his 8-year-old daughter had become famous for her simple observation that good people help people who need help. Her words were being quoted by philosophers and politicians across the galaxy. Dr. Park had established the Chaos Protocol Institute, dedicated to developing unconventional solutions to impossible problems. Scientists from across the galaxy were coming to study human methods, trying to understand how apparent disorder could create such effective results. But perhaps the most important change was in how humanity saw itself. For decades, humans had felt inferior to the advanced alien civilizations around them. Now they understood that their apparent weaknesses, their chaos, their unpredictability, their emotional decision-making, were actually their greatest strengths. Duitian. Lesson here, Vorthak concluded his testimony, is not that humans are superior to other species. The lesson is that every species has unique gifts to offer. The tragedy is that it took my near death for the galaxy to learn this truth. As the session ended, Captain Lee found himself surrounded by reporters and diplomats, all asking the same question. How had they known their plan would work? We didn't, he answered honestly. We just knew we had to try. Sometimes that's all. You need the willingness to try when everyone else has given up. In the months that followed, Vorthak established himself as humanity's greatest advocate and teacher. His vast knowledge and ancient wisdom, combined with his gratitude for human compassion, opened doors that had been closed to Earth for generations. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the youngest voices carry the most important truths, and sometimes the most primitive solutions are exactly what's needed. The age of human isolation was over. The age of human leadership had begun.